Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sudarshan Fernando. Let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Samurdhi Bank employees go on strike. Sri Lanka's economy controlled from Washington. A statement from former Governor Cabral. SLP PMPs back Namal's claims of conspiracy and say the conspirators will be exposed. Anti-Terrorism Bill will be tabled in Parliament in May, says Justice Minister.
Starting off with news here at home, Samurdhi Bank employees island-wide went on a strike citing several issues. News First correspondent said that the operations at Samurdhi banks were disrupted as a result of the strike.
General Secretary of the Samurdhi Bank Employees Association, GMAB Basnaika, said that they engaged in this trade union action over issues related to Samurdhi employees' composition and allowances. Employees of Samurdhi Bank in Matale also joined the strike today, and the customers who visited the premises to obtain the banking services were inconvenienced. This was the situation in Kurunegala.
We are here from 5 o'clock in the morning. I still didn't receive the money. They should at least display a notice. We are helpless here, especially during this festive season.
The employees of the Aknimana Hilana Samurdhi Bank in Gaul also joined the trade union action. Activities at Samurdhi banks in Kandy were also hindered owing to the strike.
We are going back because the banks are closed. We came to the bank to inspect on our Samudri allowance.
This was the response of the All Ceylon Samurdhi Development and Agriculture Research Officers Association, which did not support today's strike.
Several trade unions announced that they will engage in a massive strike, but their attempts have failed. Many Samurdhi banks are functioning. This proves the fact that this trade union action has failed. These trade unions are minor trade unions and they clearly don't have the capacity to drive for a trade union action of such nature.
These were the views expressed by trade unions who engaged in the strike today.
We are eager to see the response of the President towards the officials who don't implement his cabinet decisions on the composition in Samurdhi banks and who disregard the payment of allowances which they agreed during their meeting with the trade unions. We reject the claim that this is an attempt to topple the government.
The Colombo Magistrates Court today dismissed the private plaint filed by former Governor Kirti Tennekon against former Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral. Tennekon filed the plaint against Cabral alleging the misappropriation of funds while serving as the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kekunuvela delivered the verdict after accepting the preliminary objections filed by Cabral's lawyers.
Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kekunuvela delivered the verdict, noting that the complainant had failed to produce sufficient facts to present the charges against the accused. The complaint alleges that during his tenure as a central bank governor from 2006 to January 2015, Cabral had paid millions to Pakistani-American political donor Imad Zuberi without cabinet's approval. The complaint also alleges that while serving as the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Cabral caused a loss of $500 million to the government of Sri Lanka through sovereign bonds.
This is the first time that a legal case was filed with regard to recovery of public funds. An appeal will be filed with the High Court over the matter. The objective is clear. The money that was looted was taken overseas, which led to the country becoming bankrupt, and it must be recovered. The necessary legal action will be taken for this purpose.
He is ex-governor of the Central Bank, Ajit Niwad Cabral, responding to journalists while exiting the court premises.
Have you ever seen a moment that I am not happy? We need to be happy no matter what happens. We all need to understand that it is going to be difficult. I have read the conditions and they are tough. I read all 151 pages. I don't think it would be easy to meet those conditions. The situation is such that they cannot be amended. There is no point in speaking to me. There is no point in speaking with the ruler. You should go to Washington and pose these questions because they control the country and the economy. I was engaged in this task for 9 years. Have you ever seen me complain and weep, saying it's getting tough? We fought a war. The world fell into an abyss. Fuel prices hit $140. I never complained and I did my job. That is what is required from a leader of the country and the governor of the central bank. I am independent. I must clarify that to the country. Those are not done by the parties at times. Yet I must do what I can.
දෙදස්දා විශ්වවිද්‍යාල කුසලාන අවසාන තරගයේ තාමත් සුන්දර තරගයක් ක්‍රීඩකයන් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවාසීන් හැමදෙනාම අපි තාමත් සතුටින් භුක්ති විඳ අපි ලංකාවට ආවම ජනතාව විසින් පිළිගත් විදිහට මම දැන් මට කවදාවත් අමතක නොවන දෙයක්
2014 ICC විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ලෝක කුසලානයේ උරුමය සමගින් අපේ කේසර සිංහ රාවය මෙසේ ලොවට විරාජමාන කළ වගයි.
Several MPs from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna said that a conspiracy took place in the country as claimed by MP Namal Rajapaksa. They said that the conspirators will be exposed to the nation in the future.
On Tuesday, SLP PMP Namal Rajapaksa told an online forum that a conspiracy drove the Rajapaksas out of power.
Those who led the campaign were never non-partisan. They were aware that when Gotabaya Rajapaksa stepped down, the next president would be Mahinda Rajapaksa. That is why they strategically had Mahinda Rajapaksa removed and the next prime minister was eventually made the president. At most time, a third-party force was in play. The former officials were also pawns in this.
Several SLP PMPs commented on the allegations raised by MP Rajapaksa.
There was a definite conspiracy to drive out Mahinda Rajapaksa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa. We will reveal this at the right time.
කුමන්ත්‍රණ කරුවන් ගොඩක් අය දන්නවා මේකේ එළියේ ඇතුලේ ඔක්කොම හිටියා.
තුන්වෙනි බලවේගයක් විසින් තමයි මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමාව අගමැති ධූරය නිරපුවේ කියන්නේ. ඒ තුන්වෙනි බලවේගය කියන්නේ කවුද?
ඒක ඉදිරියේදී අපි කතා කරමු.
ඒක ඔබතුමා දන්නේ නැද්ද සම්බන්ධ?
දන්නවා හොඳට දන්නවා. මොකක්ද දේවල් දන්නවා කතා කරන්න වෙලාවක් එනවා.
When Gotabaya Rajapaksa was president, Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed as the prime minister. Then Gotabaya resigned. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the one who told the former prime minister and the entire cabinet to resign. After we stepped out, Gotabaya Rajapaksa took a few of us who left and created an entirely new cabinet. This cabinet is what exists today. Mahinda Rajapaksa and others were treated unfairly. We are seniors. I am not sure if anyone operated it. But that is what happened.
Dr. Nalaka Godaheva had this to say about the conspiracy.
At a certain point in the Aragalaya, when the entire cabinet was removed on the 9th of May, the current president Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed as the prime minister on the 11th of May. As prime minister, he said the Aragalaya must continue. Gotabaya is the president who appointed him and he said Gotagogama must continue. It was clear as prime minister he had a plan to continue with it and eventually become the president. I spoke about it. Cunning politicians always see an opportunity. They seized an opportunity via the Aragalaya. They never try to solve the issues. The Prime Minister always says the next 6 months will be tough. He never allowed the people to come out of that mentality. This is how they rise. It can be the same invisible force you speak of.
Socialist Youth Union commented on the matter as well.
The people came together to chase away the Mahindas and the Gotabayas along with their culture of politics. According to what Nama says, the third party that has intervened should be Gota, because Gotabaya is the one who told Mahinda Rajapaksa to go home. These never happened voluntarily. This includes Namal as well. However, they left upon meeting the force of the people. They were silent all this time and now they have begun bringing up ideas again. I would like to tell Mahinda, Namal and the whole lot that the people have already destroyed your dreams. Do not for a moment think that the people of this country will change their opinion because of relief. This will not happen.
Lawyers of the struggle convened a media briefing.
We would like to know from Namal Rajapaksa who this third party is. He is very confident to say that a third party spearheaded the Aragalaya. If this third party created the economic issue, we would like to know if Ranil Wickremesinghe is a third party. We would like to know if Ranil Wickremesinghe is a party to that. Ranil Wickremesinghe gained maximum political mileage. Harin also made comments. Or was it the IMF? Was it China? Was it USA? Or was it India? Before Ranil Wickremesinghe became the president, he called for support for the Aragalaya. Ruwan and Rosie even appointed committees. Therefore, is this third party Ranil Wickremesinghe? It was said at the time that the Rajapaksa family wanted Gotabaya out. So, did the Rajapaksa family do it? Namal Rajapaksa, do not assume that the people can be deceived. Did the foreigners introduce the fertilizer policy? Did a third party get involved when Cabral went ahead with printing money when everyone said not to? Was it a third party that decided to award tax holidays to their close associates? Was it the third party that led this crisis? We would like to know why they did not approach the IMF in the first instance. The Rajapaksas were involved in every decision-making process.
Rajapaksala hitiya. කුස්ලාන අවසාන තරගයේ තාමත් සුන්දර තරගයක් ක්‍රීඩකයන් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවාසීන් හැමදෙනාම අපි තාමත් සතුටින් භුක්ති විඳ අපි ලංකාවට ආවම ජනතාව විසින් පිළිගත් විදිහට මම දැන් මට කවදාවත් අමතක නොවන දෙයක්
2014 ICC 2020 ලෝක කුසලානයේ උරුමය සමගින් අපේ කේසර සිංහ රාවය මෙසේ ලොවට විරාජමාන කළ වගයි.
Sri Lanka's Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said that the Anti-Terrorism Bill that has led to much controversy is expected to be passed in May. The minister held discussions with multiple stakeholders over the proposed ATA today.
Multiple factions have pointed out that the Anti-Terrorism Bill will enable the suppression of the media, including social media, and the control of professional, civil and political forces, rather than the suppression of terrorism. They highlighted that the Anti-Terrorism Bill paves the way to prescribe jail, fine and seize the assets of individuals and organizations. Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said that upon considering requests that have been put forward, it was decided to delay tabling the Anti-Terrorism Bill in Parliament until the end of April or early May.
Multiple requests were made by lawyers, opposition groups and civil activists not to table this bill during the holiday season and when the court are on vacation, as they need more time to study it and file petitions if the need arises. Therefore, I decided to award an opportunity for it and to table this bill in the end of April or early May in Parliament. In addition, the opposition requested for discussion on the bill before the first reading in Parliament. Therefore, it will be discussed at the sectoral committee meeting on the 25th of April. It is the duty of the government to protect the lives of the people and their property. It is one of the fundamental United Nations principles. If a government cannot do that, a state will not require a government. In addition, the government also has a responsibility to protect the fundamental rights of the people. The only policy that is adopted when drafting this bill is to balance the two. Please show me how it dealt a blow to democracy. You can now go to the Supreme Court because there is more time. When you return from the Supreme Court, that issue will be addressed.
Several civil groups and trade unions met with Justice Minister on Thursday to discuss the Anti-Terrorism Bill. One meeting took place at the Lanka Private Bus Owners Association, All Ceylon Three-Wheeler Association and the All Ceylon Three-Wheeler Drivers Association.
නෑනේ දැන් වෘත්තීය සමිතියේ මේ කතන්දරේ කතා කරන්නේ ගොඩක් කට්ටිය. හරියට අපිටත් මේක බලපෑමක් තියෙනවද කියලා බලන්න ඕන.
බස්වල කොහොමද බලපන්නේ?
නෑ බස්වල නෙමෙයි ලංකාවේ වෘත්තීය සමිතියෙන් ලංකාවේ ඉල්ලීම් දිනා ගන්න පුළුවන් එකම සංගමය තමයි අපි. බොරු ඒව මවාගෙන ඉන්නව කට්ටිය. උද්ඝෝෂණය කරන්න විතරයි ඉන්න පුළුවන් හරියට.
The National Movement for a Just Society also met with the Justice Minister.
We are not against the prevention of terrorism. However, if it violates our fundamental rights, we are against it.
Legislation on terrorism is required. We are now witnessing the consequences of not enacting the existing laws. A group of rogues claim to be saving the country, but they are only slinging mud. We need to introduce legislation to a level where the country can be governed. If not, this would be a psychiatric asylum. Take a look at the conduct of the trade unions. It was similar to extortionists. Those in the CPC did not allow it to function. These matters are related to terrorism. Joseph Stalin is carrying out terror acts to stop children from going to school. We view that as terrorism. Those who carried out those terror acts are the very people speaking against it. Take a look at social media. It is like a tribal community. They always comment the words, "Rest in peace." We cannot allow a society to go ahead like this. There needs to be regulation.
The Anti-Terrorism Act was the topic of discussion on Face the Nation on Wednesday, where experts highlighted serious concerns.
Police have abused the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and we are here discussing this new bill because of that legacy. So the assumption here is that the police cannot be trusted with a piece of legislation that gives them extraordinary powers. Now, using that as a benchmark, let's look at this law. There are some changes that this law has introduced which not curtails police powers but enhances police powers. So for the first time in our history, we're going to have a piece of legislation that allows a Deputy Inspector General of Police under Section 31 of the Act to issue detention orders. So now you move from a situation where the extraordinary power of issuing a detention order, which is vested with the Minister of Defense and often the President of the Republic who holds that portfolio, you're moving that kind of power, extraordinary power, to a DIG. And if I'm not mistaken, there are about 60 odd DIGs in the country. The PTA is a child of a particular form of authoritarianism that we were used to for the last 40 years. Now there's a shift away from that form of authoritarianism to a new form. And that new form is far more sophisticated, far more insidious. It's not going to kill and disappear you, it will jail you under the law. It won't burn down your media houses, it will take over the media house. It won't murder voters and electors, it will manipulate them. So this new form of authoritarianism can't have the PTA. It has to have a more sophisticated law. And the ATA is a reflection, is a child of this new form. And that is what we need to try to understand about what is going on in terms of the politics. The ATA is a representation of the new, sophisticated, insidious form of authoritarianism that is taking over the country.
Bhavani Fonseca from the CPA expressed concern over the bill with respect to media.
But what we get in place of the PTA, the proposed legislation, on the face of it seems extremely alarming. It's a draconian piece of legislation. I think we can go into specific issues in terms of safeguards that are meant to be there. I mean, one aspect I'll be very clear is the confessions is out. First, we'll say is a welcome step in this piece of legislation. But on the whole, if you say this is to replace the PTA, then one expects it to be better, not worse. I mean, I mentioned this before. If this law passes as it stands, Clause 10 is extremely dangerous. If you look at it, it's not just mainstream TV, it's online, it's internet, it's everything. So it's basically the whole freedom of expression, freedom of publication, that is going to be held hostage. And Clause 11 follows from that as well. So those two, in a sense, in terms of media. But not just that. I think, you know, it's a very important discussion about detention, magistrates, all of that. We forget a very significant component of this bill, which is the powers of the executive. One is the prescription orders. That's for 1 year. A media entity, a civil society organization, a trade union, a law firm, any entity can be prescribed for 1 year by the president on reasonable grounds. Now, When you have so many clauses that could be used to target for someone for holding a different opinion, a different perspective, it seems people have different notions of what terrorism is.
Lawyers U.R. De Silva and Hijaz Hezbollah also spoke on the alarming provisions of the ATA.
Now, Attorney General himself goes to the Supreme Court and say that we are not going to have this death penalty hereafter. So, particular death penalty is there in penal code. It's still there. Once he is being convicted, the High Court judge says you will be sentenced to death. Thereafter, Poisons Opium Dangerous Act also, it carries death penalty over 5 grams or now over 10 grams like that. It is there, but for the sake of putting that, they have put, I don't think it is correct. As you said, we should be open and we should say that this is the maximum punishment, not the death penalty. We know very well that we are not going to implement.
The anti-terrorism bill is certainly not the improvement that we are looking for, and I totally agree with Dr. Gehan Gunatilaka in saying that this is a sophisticated piece of legislation, and in that sense we need to sort of congratulate the drafter for coming up with this sophisticated piece of law, because it represents this new style of rulership, new style of authoritarianism and a new style of lawmaking. And I look back at something that was scrawled on the walls of the 4th floor of the CID. PTA is when injustice becomes law, and if that is PTA is where injustice becomes law, this is even worse.
Prevention of Terrorism Temporary Provisions Act was passed in 1979. To this day, it is called Temporary Provisions Act. It was called Temporary Provisions because in 1979, when it was introduced, it was said to be for 6 months. Although it bore the name, or still bears the name, Prevention of Terrorism Act, it did not prevent. It actually achieved the very opposite. Now, the ironic thing is that you have a law called the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and the Easter bombing happens. That law did not prevent that attack. The introduction of this new bill has raised a lot of concerns, because this seems to have been drafted with what happened the whole of last year in this country and what may happen in the future, to prevent people gathering, people coming together to express their dissent, to protest, which is their legitimate expression under the Constitution, to stultify all of that, because I think the government is sort of bracing itself for harder times, although now the prices are coming down. Therefore, friends, we need to be prepared and galvanized to prevent this law from being enacted.
A collective of civil groups handed over an 8-point letter to overseas missions in Sri Lanka, seeking intervention against the government's attempts to introduce the new legislation to crack down on dissent. The group visited the Swiss embassy in Colombo on Thursday morning and handed over the letter to an embassy official. Thereafter, they visited the Australian High Commission and handed over the letter to the Deputy High Commissioner. In addition, copies of the letter were handed over to the Palestine, Maldives and European Union missions in Colombo. The collective of civil groups also handed over the 8-point letter to the Russian embassy in Colombo. After handing over the letter to the Dutch embassy in Colombo, the group engaged in a silent protest opposite the UN office in Colombo.
මේ ඇති වෙලා තිබෙන දරුණු අධිකාරිවාදී ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍ර විරෝධී ගමන නැවැත්වීම සඳහා ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් යම්කිසි බලපෑමක් කරන්න කියන පණිවිඩය දීම තමයි අපේ අරමුණ.
The Sri Lankan government published its new Anti-Corruption Bill via a gazette. The bill will provide for the establishment of an independent commission to detect and investigate allegations of bribery, corruption or offences related to the declaration of assets and liabilities and associated offences. Justice Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa pointed out that this bill is being introduced with the aim of preventing corruption and fraud committed by politicians and government officials in the country's public and private sectors.
Setting the pace, he claimed the tournament's most prized wicket in his first over. creating 2020 World Cup history with the best death over to tame an opposition. In a blaze of glory, two of Sri Lanka's greatest sons play their last. We claim our right to the 2014 ICC 2020 World Cup. Conquering glory for the second world title, we earn the right to be the mighty Lions of cricket.
Are political crossovers expected in the future? The Samagi Jana Balawegaya once again responded to reports on defections.
This is not something discussed by the people or the supporters. This is done by social media and newspapers close to Ranil Wickremesinghe. This is planted news.
ප්‍රශ්නේ පටන් ගත්තේ රාජිත සේනාරත්න මන්ත්‍රීතුමාගෙන් එතුමා යනවා වගේ අදහසක් මේ දවස්වල තියෙන්නේ. ඒක අහන්න ඕනේ එතුමා යනවාද කියන එක එතුමාගෙන් මගෙන් අහලා වැඩක් නැහැ. එහෙම තවම
I have no desire to join the government, but I must state that the UNP and the SJB split because of Ranil Wickremesinghe's political decision and conduct and not because of policy matters.
සමගි ජනබලවේගයේ මන්ත්‍රීවරු වුන් කියනවා අපි යන්නේ කියලා. මේ කාටද යන්නේ නැහැ කියන්නේ? ඔබතුමා යනවායි කියලා දැනගද?
නෑ ඉතින් බොහොම කට්ටිය Even I was told to say no. I am not prepared to make such comments. Defection is not the issue. The issue is whether the country will develop. I have no desire to join the government alone. This is done by political groups. The president must appeal to all parties. If that is not given consideration, then we can decide as groups. I am ready to accept the post of health minister at any given time and remove the obstacles.
මොන වෙලාවක සෞඛ්‍ය ඇමතිකම දුන්නොත් මම ඒ වගේම අරගෙන මම මේ තියෙන බාධක අයින් කරන්න මම හිතනවා මට පුළුවන්.
Sudarshan Fernando, the widow of the late Jayaraj Fernando, says that although it has been 15 years since the death of her husband, the killers responsible for his assassination have still not been apprehended. She made this statement speaking at the 15th memorial of the late minister. Jayaraj Fernando, who was a minister as well as the organizer of the government at the time, was killed in a suicide bomb attack in Valivaria on the 6th of April 2008. His 15th memorial was held opposite the Shanti grounds in Valivaria. Former President Maithripala Sirisena also attended the memorial.
Although investigations were conducted into the murder of Jayaraj Fernando Pulle, the government was not able to apprehend the perpetrators and punish them.
වැරදිකරුවන් හරියට හොයාගෙන දඬුවම් කිරීමට රජයට හැකියාවක් ලැබුණේ නැහැ.
එතන කුමන්ත්‍රණයක් තිබුණාද?
කිසිම දෙයක් සාක්ෂියක් නැතුව අපිට එහෙම තිබුණා කියලා කියන්න බෑ. හැමදේම උපකල්පනනේ.
රාජපක්ෂ දේශපාලනින් ඔබතුමා ඈත් උනේ ජයරාජ් තුමාගේ මරණයත් එක්ක යම් සම්බන්ධයක් තියෙනවද?
නෑ එහෙම
No, I moved away from the Rajapaksa politics because it did not suit me. I moved away from them because I couldn't continue with them while being true to my heart. There is no evidence to say that it was Rajapakshas that killed him. I couldn't continue with their policies. The party didn't identify my value. Therefore, I moved away.
එතන ඉන්න හැකියාව ලැබුණේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපේ වටිනාකම අපේ ඒ පක්ෂය අපි හඳුනාගත්තෙත් නැහැ. ඒ නිසා හිතට එකගව අයින් වුණා.
ජයරාජ් කියලා කියන්නේ පරිපූර්ණ පුද්ගලෙක්. ඔහුට
Jayaraj was a complete man. He was talented in all ways. I thought he will end up being a president one day. His death was a great loss to our country.
කියලා තමයි මම නම් හිතාගෙන හිටියේ. ඒ නිසා එතුමාගේ අභාවය අපේ රටට විශාල ලොකු පාඩුවක්.
The LOLC Divisavia program aimed at uplifting the future generations of Sri Lanka continued today. Books and other stationery items were distributed among students in the Anuradhapura district today.
The Divisavia program focuses on providing books and stationery items to school students from the most economically challenged regions of Sri Lanka. This worthy initiative is a collaboration between the LOLC group and the Ministry of Education. School books and stationery items were distributed among students from schools in the Anuradhapura education zone, including the Pallankulama School, Selambapuram Muslim School, Rambava Ambagaswava School and Medavachia Urapinuvava School. Books and stationery items were also distributed among students in the Tambutegama education zone in schools including the Nelupat Gama Primary School, Habaravatta Vetakoluwa Gama Primary School, Shravastipura Al Madina School and Kapirigama Primary School. The Divisavia program was also conducted at the Valisingha Harishchandra School in Anuradhapura today. The LOLC Divisavia program will continue to touch the lives of children living in rural Sri Lanka in the days to come.
And with that, we wrap up news for tonight. Take care and good night.